Good morning, welcome to day 2 here at SMTConnect. The British government's been prevaricating over Brexit for many months now, but how is it really affecting industry? Here to discuss that we have two British engineers who are very involved in it, and one is definitely a leaver, and one of them is now, I think, oscillating a little bit, so we'll get their views. So we have Keith Bryant to my left, and we have Dave Bennett from Mirtec to my extreme left. So welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning. So let's start with you, Dave, because you're running Mirtec Europe out of Plymouth
Yes.
in the UK. How is that affecting your European business, and how is it also affecting your UK business?
Well, I'll start in reverse order. The UK business is actually booming, Trevor, which is a surprise to ourselves.
Right.
They seem to... there was an early panic, I think, but it's been dragged out for such a long period of time now that it's, I guess, a typical British attitude of, oh hell, let's just get on with it. And we're seeing a lot of activity. It's probably our most buoyant market at the moment, which is quite bizarre.
Wow.
And having spoken to some of the European distributors, they are actually saying that their local factories are a little bit slower in responding. I guess it's because they're not getting the European money that they thought they might be getting in the future. So,
Right.
so if anything, it's affecting the mainland a lot more than it's affecting the UK.
UK.
I still think that, I mean, as far as Mirtec's concerned, we ship directly from South Korea to our distributor or to our customer. Doesn't affect us whatsoever, whatever happens in the UK. Literally all we're doing is sending out sales and support guys from there, so that doesn't, there's no effect there that we can see. And we also have teams in Germany already, so that's no issue at all that we can see at this time.
Right, so no effect for you. I mean, Keith, it's clearly the UK economy has been keeping pretty strong. I mean, it doesn't seem to have been affected by this at all. Everybody thought it would tank.
Yeah, and as Dave says, we have this wonderful spirit in the UK where we basically get our heads down and get on with it. Right. Where the problems come, and where, as you said, I was in exactly the same camp as Dave. I voted for us to leave, and now, if someone came to me today and said, we're going to vote tomorrow and we're going to remain, or in November, we may remain or we may stay.
Right.
I would take the let's stay.
Right.
Because there's so much insecurity now, especially everything related to the automotive industry.
Right.
Because nobody knows. It's not only that we don't know when we're leaving, but we don't know the terms. And it's becoming such... Okay, English phrase, it's a political football. It's no longer about staying or leaving, it's about politics. You have a group of people who want to stay, you have a group of people who want to leave, you have a group of people who want to run the country, you have a group of people who realize that they have control at the moment over what is happening because of the not recent now, but because of the last election where the ruling party lost a lot of its majority and now has to rely on other parties to get a vote to actually make anything happen.
Right.
And then you have a group of people who want to get rid of the Prime Minister at any cost. And all of these things are now affecting what is happening.
Right. Absolutely.
And, if you look at, okay, let's take a simple example of Nissan. I mean, Nissan have a very effective factory in the UK. They've already decided that the next iteration of one of the vehicles that they build is not going to be built in the UK. It's going to be built in Europe.
Right.
At the moment, as some people may understand or don't, we have this common tariffless system within Europe.
Yes.
So anything which is made in any country can ship to any country.
Yes.
But anything which is made outside of Europe, a car, the tariff on bringing a car from outside of Europe into Europe is 10%. Okay?
Except if it's made in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Mexico, I believe, is a free trade agreement.
Okay, but let's talk about the standard stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to get into I don't want to get into the politics. I just want to look at the numbers. Yeah, if the UK no longer has that common trade agreement, then any car built in the UK which ships to Europe will get a 10% tariff. So companies don't know whether to invest or not to invest because they don't know the terms of the leaving as to whether we will still have this common agreement or whether we won't.
Right. But that works both ways.
Yeah,
I mean, you've got
of
the
course.
German cars that come
And
into the UK.
This is it's not only vehicles. I mean, one of the biggest markets for the German farmers is the UK.
Right.
And while the European Union are at the moment saying no, we won't accept this. What they don't realize is exactly what you've said. It's a two-way street. So if they're going to charge us 10% for cars, we're going to charge them maybe 12% for food.
Right.
And then maybe suddenly now we're buying more from Australia and New Zealand and other places like we did in the past.
Yeah.
So potentially the whole landscape can change.
Yeah.
But the problem that I have is it should have been March, then it was going to be May, now it's going to be October, but still nobody knows the terms.
And it's the last thing companies need.
And
Manufacturers want stability.
Nobody wants, whether you're manufacturing, whether you're a tier 1 subcontractor, a tier 2 or a tier 3, you need some amount of stability. And as Dave says, we have this spirit that doesn't matter either way, we are going to be okay, because that's what we really believe, and we will work to make sure that we are okay. But because we don't have because we don't have even an idea of what the terms are going to be, nobody can plan anything. Right. So if we're still sitting here at another show in September and the politicians are still fighting with each other, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe they're going to say, can we go for March next year? Or do we just leave without an agreement? Or where do we go? But it's this dragging on uncertainty which is now making me think that even if the decision is not what I want, please give us a decision.
It's something we can work with.
We now have the situation the government announced last night on the back of losing almost 1,400 local council seats that we will have to hold the European elections. Even if the...
Oh, we knew that anyway.
Yeah, no.
Well, it was.
Sorry?
If we went past a certain date, we're going to have to...
Yeah, but our Prime Minister announced that if we could make a quick decision, we would not need to do this.
Right.
They also announced that if we needed to do it, the cost was going to be about £50 million. Right. Last night, they made an official announcement that there will definitely be European elections, and the cost will be about £150 million.
Wow. Okay.
That's just for holding the elections. That's not for paying the MEPs to only maybe sit for 2 months or whatever. And there was also a rumour that when you are an MEP, because of the rules of your contract, if you don't sit a full term, you get paid for that full term. So we will have a huge group of MEPs who possibly only work for 1 month, who are going to get 12 months' salary.
Interesting. So Dave, what do you call it? Obviously, there's a lot of reasons for leaving. There's a lot of things, a lot of waste and everything else. But looking at the bigger picture, is it really a good thing? I mean, let's take a look down the road here. Is Germany, for example, going to be strong enough to hold up the rest of the European Union? And if the European Union falls apart, is that good for us?
I think the thing is, Trevor, is that the vote is being done. We're supposedly a democracy. Let's just say we don't leave, which is against the popular vote. What does that mean the next time we have a general election? Oh, I don't like that. Let's do it again. What happens to anything we ever do in the future? Oh, I don't like that. There will always be the opposite side to the side that wins, whatever it is.
There's a large caucus of people that say that they didn't have enough information the first time around.
Do we have enough information for any vote?
Well, we've been swamped with information since.
I mean, how many people? I won't name names, but in the past there were certain prime ministers I voted for, and afterwards thought, "What did I do? I could claim I didn't have enough information. Can I revote?"
Yeah.
So democracy is a case of you have whatever facts. If you don't have enough facts, get more.
Okay.
If you're worried that you don't have the right figures, you can either get more information or don't vote.
Right.
That's your choice.
Right.
If you do vote, You expect that if you lose, then you follow the majority. That's a democracy. And if you win, everybody follows your vote. The situation that we've got at the moment is, as a democracy, we have turned around and said, we don't want to be in this anymore. And there are people saying, but I do. That's not democracy.
But it doesn't concern you that the European Union could fall apart?
I think it will. I think 100% it will. I mean, there's no way. I mean, I'd spoken to you before that one of my Spanish distributors contacted me and said that they'd seen a program on Spanish TV where they said, this is catastrophic. This is like 19 countries leaving the EU. That's how much the value of the UK is to the EU. Yeah. But it's not that value to the UK. It's that value to Europe. So we're pulling out. We will become a lot wealthier. Do you honestly think that Volkswagen don't want to sell cars in the UK? We're their second biggest market in the world.
Of course.
It's the same thing with Mercedes. It's the same thing with BMW. How many English cars do we sell to Germans? It doesn't happen, you know? And if we do sell cars that are manufactured in the UK, they're not British, they're Japanese or Korean. Right. The situation that we have is on one hand, you've got, okay, there's a risk. Of course there is. Nobody can see in the future. But the dice has been cast. Okay. My biggest concern is, how can we possibly not follow the democratic vote? I
think that's inevitable. But you know, this is going to go on for months to come, guys. Yeah. It's great to get your feedback on it. So I think we're gonna leave it there. Coming back after the break, we're going to talk about what's happening on the world stage. And welcome back. So, Keith, I want to turn our attention now to the world stage. I was in China a couple of weeks ago, and I noticed a lot of changes happening. First of all, a lot of companies leaving China, primarily driven by, I'm guessing, the US-China trade war and the fact that they're pricing themselves, you know, the labor rates are rising.
Yeah, even the Chinese manufacturers are looking to move their manufacturing outside of China. Right. And I spoke to some a few weeks ago, and I said, look, you know, these trade wars, they come and they go. Yeah. You know, and you're making a huge investment in your future by moving manufacturing away from it.
That's right. It doesn't happen overnight, does it?
And the comment was quite simple. It's happened once, it could happen again. So these guys are actually looking at what they're doing as insurance against something like this happening again in the future.
And in that case, you know, they're obviously talking about the United States in that context, and that has been said in the US that it's likely that future administrations in the United States will have to continue the trade policies that Trump has started. So very, very true. They're looking ahead to see. So let's see, where are they going? Which countries are they migrating to?
The companies who are the winners at the moment, probably the biggest short-term winner is Thailand. It already has the infrastructure, it has the people, and it has a good basis of electronics manufacturing, contract manufacturers, and OEMs also. Okay. So that's the shorter-term gain. And that's the one which obviously it can happen faster.
Right. What about Vietnam?
Vietnam people have looked at. In fact, a lot of people are moving there, and I think Vietnam is probably close to getting full now. And then people are moving on to Cambodia because that's also potentially another low cost. Doesn't have as much infrastructure. Things are going to be a little bit tougher there. And as we spoke before we started, also, you know, people have got to be looking at India. Right. You know, as you said, huge market in itself, very good skill level of people, but infrastructure there is very difficult, and historically it's been very hard for companies who've set up over there to manage and not only set up but also to grow their business.
Yeah, it is a very limiting factor. I mean, it's that when China first opened up, that was the first thing they did. They put in state-of-the-art road infrastructure and communications up the eastern seaboard, but the Indians just don't seem to have gone that route, and it is a real limiting factor.
Yeah, and I have to say it's a shame, because you look at the quality of the stuff that they produce, and it would be, I think most people's first choice if there was an infrastructure that matched everything else.
Right.
And as we've said, and as we know, labor rates keep going up in China, and really that's because of the scarcity of labor, and that's not going to change.
Yeah.
So I think more and more forward-thinking, not only companies with manufacturing in China, but more importantly the China manufacturers themselves, especially if you were a China mobile phone manufacturer and you smiled at and viewed the market in India, you'd definitely be thinking, yeah, I need to put a facility in here and build a hell of a lot of phones very quickly.
Right.
But doing it is just so tough.
But it's happening because, that's another interesting dynamic, is that Apple and Samsung seem to have priced themselves out that market, and it's the 6 major Chinese brands that are making big inroads into India.
Yeah, and we're seeing that little bit of a change. I mean, the market that Samsung and Apple have is still huge, and it's going to carry on being huge. And I'm sure the majority of people, at least outside Asia, carry either one of those 2 brands in their pockets, and will carry on doing so for such a long time.
Right.
But you're right. The growth of the let's call it the middle ground is definitely coming out of Asia. There's even a company now setting up manufacturing in South Africa for all of Africa.
Really?
Because obviously South Africa has a good infrastructure compared to some of the other places. But
this is cell phones.
Yes, cell phones, and it's what I would call a low-end smartphone as well. It's not a basic cheap straightforward phone. It's designed to have a good level of technology inside it as well.
Right. So the interesting thing about the Indian scenario as well is that unlike in the past, you've always had to go to the US to get sign-off to sell machines to different parts of the world, or to install in different factories. Going forward, it looks like you're going to have to go to China to get sign-off, which is
for sure, because that's where a lot of the power is now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of interesting. And then, of course, they started with this infrastructure up the Eastern Seaboard, but now they're trying to expand it across the world with this Belt and Road. What's your view on that?
I admire so much, I have to say, that the Chinese people do. They're very focused, and when they see something that's a good idea, regardless of the difficulty, the challenges they have, and maybe the problems that it's going to cause, they just put their head down and run towards it.
Right.
And I think this is, it's simple, it's straightforward, it's logical. It's going to be tremendously difficult. But
it's going to be tremendously difficult. And actually, I saw an advertisement for it in China when I was there, and it was quite funny because they said that in future, in 5 years' time, along the Belt and Road, people are going to be buying products, all based on, because they can get it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Everything was based around cost. It wasn't based around anything else.
Yeah. The further down the road you go, the lower the costs are.
Yeah. But it's an interesting world. The dynamics are changing, and the factories do seem to be moving. In fact, I even heard one story about an OEM who had asked his contract manufacturer to move their production outside of China, and was going to fine them up to $1 million a month for every month they were delayed. That's how serious they were about getting out.
Yeah, I mean, we've always sort of smiled and said we live in a global marketplace, and I think now, the globe hasn't got any bigger. What's happened is more and more countries are moving into being potentials for playing the game,
right?
And everything is moving that much faster.
Yeah,
and a lot of it is driven as a result not of the needs of manufacturing, but it's starting to be the politics.
Right.
And this is, if you like, for me, the way I describe it is this is the new dimension.
Right.
Before we had to move because of costs of labor, availability of labor, and all of these things. But now we have to, we have this sort of extra layer, which is, political challenges.
And that's a dangerous one, because the problem with when political administrations make decisions, they are sweeping changes. You know, they have massive effects. I remember being in the solar industry and when they used to control tariffs in the solar industry, and it decimated the industry because you would make up all this inventory expecting the demand, and the government would change its mind.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they took away the subsidies in
Yeah.
a lot of countries in Europe, and suddenly everything dried up.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. Yeah, so it's dangerous when the governments get involved, you know. But I'd
Oh.
rather leave it to market forces.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, market forces and good business planning are definitely a much better solution.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, good to see you again. Thank you for catching up and your views of the current status of world trade.
Thanks, Trevor. Always a pleasure.
Okay, and thank you for joining us today. That brings us to the end of our programming for Wednesday here at SMT Connect.